So, yes, we are right in the thick of WWDC, the Worldwide Developer Conference, an annual event from Apple. It's happening over the next couple days as we're recording this. But really, what we were focused on is trying to see what Apple is doing with artificial intelligence as announced during its opening keynote. And they certainly told us because the first and kind of biggest AI announcement that came out of the keynote at WWDC is something that the company is calling Apple Intelligence, which is conveniently abbreviated AI. And this is a suite of AI features that are now going to be baked right into all Apple devices. So, according to Apple, quote, Apple Intelligence is the personal intelligence system that puts powerful generative models right at the core of your iPhone, iPad, and Mac, empowers incredible new features to help users communicate, work, and express themselves. So, this includes a number of different Gen AI features, things like AI text generation, image generation, and photo editing. There's also an integration with ChatGPT, so you can access that right through iOS. And very much anticipated, there is now going to be a much smarter version of Siri, which is Apple's voice assistant. Siri will have highly upgraded conversational features and the ability to actually take some actions for you across your apps. So, kind of a big draw of this whole Apple intelligence system was kind of how contextual it promises to be. So, again, according to Apple, quote, awareness of your personal context enables Siri to help you in ways that are unique to you. Can't remember if a friend shared that recipe with you in a note, a text, or an email? Need your passport number while booking a flight? Siri can use its knowledge of the information on your device to help you find what you're looking for without compromising your privacy. And indeed, that last bit is important because Apple made privacy a pretty big talking point of its Apple Intelligence rollout. And they kept kind of emphasizing that while Apple Intelligence can understand the context of all your personal information, it is not collecting that information. It's using what Apple is calling private cloud compute to, quote, handle more complex requests while protecting your privacy. So all of this was kind of a preview of what's coming. All the Apple Intelligence and Siri features are going to become publicly available to all us users later this year on the iPhone 15 Pro, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, iPads, and Macs with M1 chips or later. So, Paul, you're, a longtime Apple watcher. What were your impressions of the releases and what do they kind of mean for where Apple now stands in this AI arms race we find ourselves in?
So it was interesting. We've always been waiting for this for a really long time, but I was golfing yesterday. So I'm on the board for Junior Achievement of Greater Cleveland. I've been on the board there for, gosh, almost 10 years. And so I was out golfing with our friend Joe Polizzi. So we were in a cart together and it happened. We teed off at 12:30 and the thing starts at 1. So Joe and I, in between shots, have the presentation like streaming on our phones. So I was kind of catching bits and pieces and I would catch little bits at a time. And then I got home late last night. And that's when I started kind of really diving in. And so I'm going to try and structure this just kind of like some very high level takeaways. I'm not going to get into like a lot of the nitty gritty of all the features. There's some really cool stuff coming. So my first thought was no major wow moments, like
Mm,
nothing unexpected, splashy, wildly innovative that was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. That being said, they did what they had to do. And I think the key takeaway, and I don't think like the average Apple user is going to know or care about this, but they're doing it on their own chips, their own devices, with their own privacy controls. And the biggest thing to me was on their own models. Now, they've been unusually open about their research in recent months. They've shared some of the research that sort of a prelude to this, that they were working on these kind of on-device models. But I think this was my biggest takeaway is they did this the Apple way, which is maintaining and building trust with the user. So I've said this before on the podcast, and I think it's worth repeating. When we think about all the possibilities of people building AI agents to help take actions and connect to your apps and do all these things, the end of the day, I trust Apple. more than any other company. So I trust that they will build the safest, most secure, most human-centric models, and that's exactly what they're doing. So they focused a lot. I read this. They have a machine learning research arm, and that arm published a paper like how their models work. And so I was actually focused on that last night. And so they talk about the fact that they take like a base model and then they fine tune for specific use cases around communication, work, expressing ourselves, and then getting things done across Apple products. And that's exactly what they demonstrated. So I think what people have to do is separate this. We talk so much about Anthropic and Google building these massive frontier models and OpenAI and others. That is not Apple's play. That is not what they're trying to do here. They are going to, rather than build and release like these general purpose models pursuing AGI, they're focused on fine-tuned, efficient models that enhance the user experience and solve for real-world applications. That's the Apple way. Well, why? Think about what Apple's mission statement is. It is to bring the best user experience to its customers through innovative hardware, software, and services. That's what this does. Contrast that with OpenAI's mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. So we have one company going and building massive frontier models that are going to be general purpose and maybe achieve AGI at some point this decade. And you have Apple saying we have billions of devices. We're just going to make people's lives better, like one feature at a time to where it becomes like frictionless and they don't even have to think about it. So the Apple way is models are trained on licensed data, or they give you the opportunity to opt out very easily if you don't want your data infused in their models from the web. Profanity is actually removed from the training data. They build algorithms to remove harmful content, which they would consider profanity, harmful content. They have image generation, but you can't do lifelike images. You can do sketches, illustrations, or animations. When they evaluate how the models perform, they don't use the standard industry evals. They use human evals to benchmark models against things people actually do on devices. So they're looking at communication, work, expression of self. So they use these, then they also look at evals against harmfulness, and their models dominate. Like if you go look at their data in these reports, they are the safest and they are the least harmful models out there. Like if you compare it to Mistral, it was scary. Like Mistral's model is not safe. And then everything stays on device or in their private cloud that they introduce. So that is very much the Apple way. And so that was actually, I think, my biggest question mark. One was what were they going to do with Siri? Two was what is this OpenAI partnership going to be? Are they going to give up all of their models to OpenAI? Like that seemed impossible to me, knowing Apple's approach. So that then takes me into the OpenAI part of it. I honestly, I just expected more. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I actually think they made the right play not going deeper with OpenAI. But the way it works is the ChatGPT is built in. So on the Apple Intelligence site, it says with ChatGPT from OpenAI integrated into Siri and writing tools, you get even more expertise when it might be helpful for you. Meaning if you need the power of a general model, a frontier model, we're going to make it seamless for you. You don't have to pay for it. So you're getting ChatGPT capabilities for free on your phone if you want it. And then you can choose, like they'll alert you saying, hey, this information goes to OpenAI. It's like anonymized and things like that. But they're just letting you know each time you're making a choice to leave the protection of the Apple bubble, basically. So I like the big thing for me was like, are they going to turn Siri? Like, are they just going to use OpenAI's voice capabilities in Siri? And they did not do that. And they actually left it open to infuse Gemini and other models later. Like they basically said, like, this isn't an exclusive thing. We're just going to make it easy for you to get access to these models if you want. So I think the Apple Intelligence thing makes a ton of sense. I think they demonstrated their chip, capability, the hardware being a differentiator, their ability to manufacture and build intelligence into devices is unparalleled. Those are a couple things. Then you get into like, well, is this going to actually work? We've all over the last year and a half seen plenty of AI demonstrations that are like, yeah, that was great. Like in a year and a half later, we're still waiting for it to be able to do that. But Andrej Karpathy, who we often talk about on the show, he tweeted that he was impressed. But then he said, someone said, oh, yeah, but it's just demos. And he's like, I agree. Like the proof will be in the pudding. But I will say that I think the technology exists to do what they're showing. Like there's nothing that they would need to invent that isn't already possible. And then the last couple things, Siri, again, this was the big one I was waiting for. So if you go to the page and you read about, what they're doing, They say the start of a new era for Surrey. And that was the one thing, like in between going up to the tee box and coming back, my initial impression up front was like, oh, they're introducing some stuff, but it sounds like a year from now, here's what we might do with Surrey. So I think we're going to have a much more useful Surrey this fall. Like it's going to have the on-screen awareness you talked about. It's going to know what's on the screen and be able to, but protected on your device. Like only you and your device are aware of this. It's going to know personal context from the information on the device. It's going to have the ability to start taking actions, kind of functioning as an agent. It's going to help with summarization and proofreading and, mail replies. And it's like, it's going to start doing these things. But they're doing it in this really unique way where they're building what are called these adapters that actually functions on top of the main model. And so the model stays kind of in its static state almost. And then the adapters like evolve and learn. And so I think what it might lead to, I've heard a couple of people who I respect say like this was the biggest thing they've done since the iPhone, which is not the initial reaction you heard. A lot of people are like, meh, like it didn't seem like a big deal. But I think what they're doing with Surrey and where it's going to go, and by building all these really efficient models right on the phone and being able to do all these things on device, if you think about what the iPhone did, it changed the computing interface to touch. Like it enabled us to touch screen everything. I think now we will start entering the era of the voice interface, like a true voice interface where it's able to do everything on your Mac, on your iPhone, on your iPad, with your AirPods, eventually probably with, something beyond the Vision Pro that's more everyday life kind of glasses. And so I think that voice starts to become a very, very important interface for humans with their devices in a very reliable way that maybe we haven't had before. And then my final note is the stock was down like 1.8% on the day. That was the king. Joe and I kept going like after something would happen, we'd be like, okay, check their stock real quick. Oh, go check Microsoft stock. Like we were kind of watching how was the market responding. And so I would say that down 1.5 to 2% was a meh from the market. Like it's up 15%, I think, since March, kind of anticipating this news. My thought was it could swing 5 to 10% either way based on whether the market thought what they were doing was incredible or not. And the fact that it was like 1-2% was just kind of like, yeah. So I don't think the market's pricing in the potential value of everything they've done, but I also don't think they penalized them for not doing anything massively innovative.
That's a great assessment. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this piece, but we should also mention that Elon Musk came out guns blazing pretty immediately.
Shocking.
Yeah, right. None of this is news, but basically he claims he is going to consider banning Apple devices at his companies because they're integrating OpenAI's tech at the operating system level. And at one point he posted, quote, "It's patently absurd that Apple isn't smart enough to make their own AI, yet is somehow capable of ensuring that OpenAI will protect your security and privacy." So seems like there's some criticism here. This is not any surprise, but we probably should expect
I
a
had to
war of
laugh
words.
because he got community noted right away. So
Yeah,
he's such
yeah.
a big fan of these community notes, and he got community noted hard on this. And then uh, Marquez Brownlee, who we love, does amazing product reviews and stuff, and was at the Apple event. He tweeted and he's like, "Listen, I asked them directly. What you're saying isn't true. Like, it's not. This isn't how it's going to work." I mean, when I saw the tweets around, I was like, "Man, he really hates OpenAI. Like, this is all about a vendetta
Yeah.
against OpenAI. It's like that immediate overreaction and making this assumption that your data is going to go there, and like, yeah, people are going to have to, like, if they're coming to SpaceX or Tesla, put their iPhones in a Faraday cage. So like, come on, like it was just an overreaction. So yeah, it is what it is.